Okay, welcome everyone. What I'd like to do is take a few minutes and give you a review for exam two. Now, exam two is going to be primarily skin, it'll be bone physiology, and just a few questions on a few additional things that we talked about in class in terms of muscle physiology, but again, just some very basic introduction to myology. Okay, and I'll give you a little bit of a lead in with that, all right? So this exam will be 60 questions, and let's just run right through it. Um, So you need to know the different parts of the integumentary system. Um, what makes up the integumentary system, okay? So if I were to say all the following are part of the integument, except for, you'd be able to pick it out. You also need to know what the layers of the skin are. So if I were to say all the following are considered to be different layers of the skin, except for which one, you could pick it out. We know that skin uh, between the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous, is made up of epithelium, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve. Um, but I would know which layer is composed primarily of just epithelium, and then which layer contains muscle tissue and nerve tissue and connective tissue. Know the different skin cells and know which ones are designed to provide immunity for us. Also know the layers of the epidermis, the different stratum layers from superficial to deep or from deep to superficial, so you can put them in order. There'll be some basic questions about the characteristics to the stratum layers. So I would know some of the basic um, functional and structural characteristics to each of the stratum layers. I would know which is the superficial layer, which is the deeper layer. Remember, the deep one is the stratum basal or the stratum germinativum. They're interchangeable terms. Know which layer you find um, uh, on the palms and the soles of the feet, which layer is continuously shedding, know whether the skin is water resistant or waterproof, what the difference is. We spoke about that in class. We also spoke about what happens if your body is in ocean water compared to a traditional chlorinated pool. In terms of the skin cells, which one is the most abundant? It's important to know some of the skin pathologies. I think we spoke about psoriasis. I would know what that is. I would know what osteoporosis is and all the different things that can cause it. We know that decreased calcium was one thing, right? We talked about vitamin D and the importance of it. We spoke about consuming protein, how important that is, but not just consuming the protein, because it's not just you are what you eat, but it's also you are what you can absorb, break down, and assimilate. So we know the importance of digestive enzymes is very important. Um, we also know that obesity could be a potential problem for osteoporosis because the fat cells produce chemical messages, those cytokines. Many of them are inflammatory, and those inflammatory cytokines can be very destructive to bone. So make sure you review osteoporosis and all the different types of factors that can cause it. Um, I would know a little bit about the nails. What is clubbing of the nails and what is leucantia? Um, what is spooning? What can cause spooning of the nails and clubbing of the nails and leucantia, some of the basics. In terms of skin color, um, everything that deals with skin pigmentation, make sure you review those. So you should be familiar with, remember, melanin and keratin and hemoglobin. What is jaundice? What is cyanosis? What is erythema? What gives oxygenated blood its appearance? What happens if blood is deoxygenated? Know what freckles are? What is albinism? What is vitiligo? Know what the differences are there. Understand what the erector pili muscle is responsible for doing. Know what a sudiferous gland is, and a sebaceous gland, and a ceruminous gland. We briefly spoke about dermatomes. Review rank and rankle. Where do you find receptor activated nuclea kappa compared to receptor activated nuclea kappa ligand? The different parts of the long bone, the epiphysis, diaphysis, metaphysis. Know what the osteocytes are, what osteoclasts are, what is an osteoprogenitor cell. The difference between osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Different parts of the osteon. What is a lacuna, the canaliculi, the eversion canal or central canal? Where is the osteocyte found? What is the cavity? What are the concentric lamellae? Where do you find osteons? Where is spongy bone located? In terms of the long bone, what type do you find at the ends where the proximal and distal epiphysis is? What do you find where compact bone is, where the shaft is? And then I would also make sure you know some of the classical examples of what are the long bones and what are the short bones, what are flat bones and what are irregular bones. If I were to give you a few examples, you could tell me, oh yeah, I know what the scapula is, or what the sternum is, or a lumbar vertebrae, or the carpal bones, right? Um, we spoke about calcium and calcium absorption and how vitamin D is needed. for calcium absorption, and vitamin K is needed to drive it into the bones. But what would be bad for calcium absorption, right? We know that calcium and water go together, right? That's why it's called mineral water in nature. So if I drink too much water, I could be flushing out a lot of my minerals. If I drink too much coffee, which is a diuretic, right, I'd be losing too much water. If I had foods that were too salty, salt makes you thirstier, then you drink more, then you flush your body out again with that water. Um, if I consume uh, if I consume too much protein, my body has to break down those proteins and flush out a lot of the ammonia and nitrogen from the metabolic waste. Again, you could lose a lot of calcium from that, just from the flushing of all that debris. So um, it's important to know what's good and what's bad for calcium and its absorption within the body. I would also know what hormones are involved if blood calcium was too high and you wanted to lower it, or if blood calcium was too low and you needed to raise it. First, second, and third degree burns. Make sure you know the differences and the characteristics of them. And there'll be one question, if I were to give you an example and say, okay, if a person just had burns on the genitalia, what percentage of the body is burned? If it's the front and the back of one of their arms, what percentage? If it's the front and back of an arm, but both legs, what percentage? If it's just the front of the legs, what percentage, right? So you had basic one simple question um, on the overall percentage of body being burned. UVA, UVB rays. Just a few questions on those, right? If you have too much or excess of a certain one, it can cause some free radical damage and really hurt the skin and disrupt the collagen and the elastic fibers. I would know which rays can really penetrate deep and destroy some of the vitamins like folic acid that's in the body. Which rays are needed to help with the production of vitamin D.